Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bootstrap Solo. I am Pratik Shah, your host, and today we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly about running your own practice. This podcast is for those that want to know what it's really like to start, run, and grow a practice. Today's guest, very special guest today, is Genie Harrison. She runs the Genie Harrison Law Firm, which is an 8-person practice that focuses on employment law, sexual harassment, and discrimination. She started her practice back in 2013 and has been growing strong ever since. Genie, welcome to the show.
Pratik, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
I am so glad you're here. I mean, everybody knows you. You're a CALA past president. You've gotten some incredible results. And so I really appreciate you coming on and being able to talk to our audience about how you've done all this stuff. And let me start at the beginning. You know, we chatted a little bit before the show. You got licensed in 1992, but you didn't start your own practice until 2013, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So tell me about what you were doing between 92 to 2013.
So my very first year out of law school, I did a clerkship at the LA Superior Court with 2 trial court judges. Because I wanted to really get my feet wet and understand what was happening in the trial courts, right? And so then I went out, and this is, then 93. I went out and was an associate at a firm for probably about like 6 years. Then and I was in that time period. I mean, things were really different then too, right? It was like there was just a much more of a traditional path in practicing law. And people, especially women, really weren't going out and starting their own law firms at the time. And so I sort of took that path. And then I was doing some business litigation. I did also plaintiff's employment law. It was sort of, in its infancy at that time, plaintiff's employment law. And so I was doing, some individual cases, select cases, and I really wanted to just do employment law. I definitely cut my chops on business litigation and learning how to just work a file really hardcore. But then I transitioned into the plaintiff's employment law practice by at first being an associate for a solo, right?
And that's a different experience than working for a firm.
Yeah, definitely. And having to work on a shoestring there and figure out how to make, how to maximize the outcome on cases with very little money in terms of resources. And then eventually became a partner with that solo, but that didn't work out. And so then I ended up going, and I started at that point for about a year, maybe a year and a half. I had the law offices of Genie Harrison, but I was working kind of on contract with a different law firm. So I was like, just committed to this one very large case at this other law firm. Well, that went very well. We had a 7-month trial and at that law firm and with that arrangement. And so then we decided to become partners. That was Litt, Estuar, Harrison, and Kitson. And so that went on for a little while. And then I decided that I needed to leave there. And then I ended up being a partner in a different firm for about 3 years. And that's when, we transitioned into, okay, now finally it's 2013, August of 2013, and Genie starts her own firm. And why in the world does that happen?
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. What led to that decision? I mean, obviously it seems like you always wanted to be in this ownership role. Like besides the few early years in your career where you worked at a firm and worked for the solo, since then you had always kind of been in this ownership role, either as law offices of Genie Harrison or a partnership at different places, and then eventually decided to go completely on your own, no partners. Tell me about how that happened.
Yeah. So as I like to say, I figured out that I was the problem in all those relationships.
I doubt
seriously.
that.
No, because I did. And I think it's important to talk about because I was constant. I really, again, I was coming from a much more what we would talk about as a and refer to as a sort of traditional approach to
Yeah.
practicing law. I thought I had to have partners. I thought that that was the only way people would take me seriously. I had these,
Mm.
older notions based on what it looked like when I started practicing law, right? And so
Yeah.
finally, and all along the way, Pratik, I had my own ideas about how things should be done, what the decision should be. I don't think we should do it that way. We should do it this way, et cetera, et cetera. And I was, outvoted or what have you, and I was very frustrated. And so that's when my husband, my dear husband James said, who's a serial entrepreneur, said, you got to go out and make your own firm, man. You can't be, hitting your head against a brick wall and it's of
Yeah.
your own making.
And there's a little bit, and I could speak to this for myself, is that there's a little bit of like imposter syndrome where, you start your practice and you're like, well, I've never run a practice. I don't really know if I'm doing things the right way. This person probably knows better than me. And then you find out they don't know any better than you either. And you're just both trying to figure it out. That's what I went through. I'm not sure if you kind of felt that at all.
Oh yeah, for sure. And honestly, I think we are our own worst enemies in terms of the things that we tell ourselves in our own heads, right? Because I made running the business out to be like a lot more. It is time consuming, it is hard, it is stressful. Certain things are very complicated, but I made it out to be, unknowable on my own.
Yeah.
Really. I made it out to be like this hugely impossible task, which is why I put it
Yeah.
off for so long. And honestly, particularly, like I knew that I was destined to really start my own firm and stand on my own 2 feet, without being attached to another firm, not an of counsel, not a nothing. I knew that for years before it
Yeah.
happened. And I said for years, like, I know that's where I'm headed because it's the thing of which I am most afraid. And
Yeah.
I tell you, when my husband said, you got to go out and make your own law firm, I was like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to run a business. I never ran a business on my own. I mean, I was
Yeah.
apoplectic, but I knew
Right.
it was true that I
Yeah.
needed to do that. And so I got to say, with a lot of things in terms of stuff I've accomplished, I tell people, good God, if I can do it, you can do it. And if you look at me and think, oh, she's got it all together and she, she's firing on all the cylinders and it's easy for her. I'm like a duck, on the water with those little, I'm paddling like
Yeah.
this as fast as I can,
Yeah.
trying to look calm on the top. We're all doing the same thing.
We're all doing that. Yeah, I
We
think that's
are.
so. I try to tell people that all the time is like, it's so easy to look at someone else's business and someone else's firm and feel like, oh my God, they have it all figured out and I'm struggling. But the reality is, everybody is trying to figure it out as they go along. And the more mistakes people have made, the more that they've learned. And don't
Exactly.
assume that your competitor or anyone else is any smarter than you are.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, it's very satisfying to take the risk on yourself and to have it pay out,
Yeah.
pay off, in terms of just knowing that you built it,
Yeah.
and you did it your way. And it's so great not to have the noise, for me, not to have the noise of other people's issues, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so that was always very distracting in my partnerships, with other people's issues and trying to manage those relationships. And I just don't have to deal with that anymore. Now, as a boss and as a manager, you know, I even I dislike drama in my
Yeah.
office and at home so much. Like when I am interviewing people, I tell people, listen, this is a zero, and I mean zero
Yeah.
drama office. Okay. I won't tolerate drama,
Right.
interpersonal drama in the office, because the practice of law is dramatic enough in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I need the
Yeah.
time and my energy to be focused on our clients' needs. And I need, the employee, our staff and other lawyers attention
Yeah.
and energy to be focused on the client's needs, on dealing with opposing counsel, on dealing with the court, and in trying to, help others within the legal practice as well. That's where our energies need to be focused, not on, where did you put your coffee cup,
Yeah.
and crap like this. So it is so great now that I set the parameters and set the terms that are
Yeah.
comfortable for me, for my
Yeah.
working environment. And I get to just come to work and live the way I want to live, consistent with my own
Yeah.
values. And that is something I really appreciate.
Yeah, so it's something like, we've heard this. I've heard this like from people out there of like kind of designing your own life kind of thing, right? Like you with intention have designed the firm the way you want it. And would you say that in the years prior, you've learned what you didn't want, and now you've realized what you do want? Is that fair to say?
Exactly. Absolutely fair to say. And it's for me, I agree with you. You mentioned something about like, if things don't work, you're learning. And that is absolutely the growth mindset. The reality is that, when things don't work, we figure out how to tack a little bit closer towards where we actually want to be, right?
Hmm.
And failure, I mean, what people call failure, even though it
Right.
has all of these negative connotations, it's just like the thing didn't work the way I thought or I intended or I envisioned. And so I'm either going to completely abandon it or I'm going to change it, retool, and refire. And it just, one of the things that's just so amazing about the practice of law, having done it now for a few decades, is that I always have the opportunity to learn and change and develop myself, emotionally, intellectually, in regards to, my clients' cases. I love that I have to learn like a new business virtually in every single case
Yeah.
that I do in the employment law area.
Yeah.
And I learn, about different human beings, in every case. And I think it's endlessly fascinating. And, I get myself into trouble if I'm not constantly, completely engaged. Like that's when
Yeah.
I know myself, I get into trouble then. Right. So it's
Yeah.
great that I have a very demanding career. I need that. And so I love the fact that I get to learn all of these new things, develop new business techniques and
Yeah.
strategies, and create new things. And I mean, Pratik, I'm 30 years in.
Yeah.
I started practicing law when I was 23.
Right.
And
Wow.
so, yeah, I'm 30 years in now. And so it still is an endlessly captivating, way to spend my life. Yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought that up. So you're a 30-year lawyer. You started your practice in 2013, which is about 9 years ago. So you were practicing for about 2 decades, just a little over 2 decades, when you started your practice. I mean, for a lot of people, and maybe for you too, did it feel like you were kind of starting over again?
Yeah, it did. And, I mean, in some ways, like, I don't regret the way things happen in my life. Like, I don't have that, right? But in some ways, I wish I could have or had chosen to start my firm earlier.
Hmm.
But I'm also very grateful that I did it when I did it. So, like, everything
Hmm.
happens for a reason. I really do believe that, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm good with it, but I can imagine I'm excited. Let me put it this way. I'm excited for the lawyers who are looking at starting their practices earlier on in their careers than I did. I'm excited for them.
Yeah. So when you did start in 2013, now when we hear you now and you tell us about the parameters you've set in your law firm, right? Like, hey, look, this is how we aggressively fight for our clients. This is how we represent them. You got to learn on every case. We're drama free. These parameters that you set, did you have them when you started in 2013, or is that stuff you've kind of learned along the way? Obviously, zealously advocating for your clients. Everybody knows your reputation, knows that you were doing that already, but as far as the management rules,
Um, no, these were definitely, principles that I had already developed. And, I learned through the early years that I don't like the drama in, the work environment. I hate it. And I don't like people being duplicitous and manipulative and all of those kinds of things. Like I am a blunt instrument. I'm like a hammer. I'm bam,
Yeah.
bam, 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 and straightforward.
Yeah.
That's just the way I am. And I need to be surrounded by people who are similar, and also, even if they're somewhat different, not in the not in the core values that I hold.
Yeah.
They need to have the same core values, even if they approach things somewhat differently in, like the mechanism, right? And so
Yeah.
when they see things differently, like I value it when people see things differently than I do, and they work differently than I do, because I get to learn from that, and that
Yeah.
hones me, right? But I have to be working with people who appreciate my core values and what I bring to the table as like a human being, because otherwise it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But and I want to touch on what you talked about being blunt and being straightforward. I think that's super important as a business owner and as a manager. You have to just say, "Here is what I expect of you." And
Yeah.
if you can't say that directly, you don't want to be rude about it. You have to do it in a nice way, but you have to say, "Here are what my expectations are." And if you can't meet the expectations, then maybe this isn't the place for you. But if you don't have that ability, you should develop that, right? Like not you, but I'm telling the audience, right? That if you don't have that ability to sit down with somebody and say, this is what is expected of you, and this is how I expect you to act and perform at my company, I think you're going to run into some trouble. What do you think?
I totally agree with you. I think it's really important. And it's so important because, the rest of your organization is looking to see whether or not you're going to be a leader, and whether you're
Hmm.
going to allow these things in their workplace or not, right? And they won't respect you, and they
Hmm.
won't respect and value the workplace if you are not demonstrating respect for them by actually, being clear about your expectations, and then enforcing the rules and
Yeah.
enforcing those expectations. People will be like, well, I'm doing my job. I'm meeting her expectations, but that person over there isn't. Why should I
Right.
work so hard to follow the rules? And then she just lets this other person get away with it, and that causes me strife and trouble, and I have to cover for the other person and all that kind of stuff. And it's just
Yeah.
like, I mean, you put yourself in other people's shoes and realize, like, I wouldn't appreciate it if my employer says one thing and does another. I
Right.
don't respect
Right.
that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a person who respects that kind of thing. So,
Yeah. Was that something was that a skill you had to develop and learn, or was that something that came naturally to you?
oh, it came naturally to me.
Yeah. That's kind of,
I
so one
always
of the other
told
things you
people what
talked
I
about.
thought.
Good, as you should. I mean, as
Yeah.
everybody should. I don't think there's any room in this profession, and like you said, we work so hard on our cases and they take so much time that there just isn't really a lot of room for everything else. And if me being direct and clear with you is you're going to feel that that's rude, and then I mean that's just how I operate, and it's my show, so that's just the way it
Yeah.
works.
And that's why, like, I really did. I didn't understand earlier in my life how important, teaming up with people who have those same principles and values is. It's just
Yeah,
where I'm able to be comfortable and then excel on the actual casework. Um, and really become my my own person. And it's interesting because I even though I was a successful partner in these other firms, and I would get verdicts and settlements, and
yeah.
I mean a lot, big stuff, right? I didn't stand out until I stood alone.
Mm,
And so that is when I was really able to develop clarity about who I really am, what my brand is, who I want to speak to in the community, what kind of clients I want to draw to myself, what cases I absolutely love doing, and being super intentional about everything. And so it's been definitely a journey, but it's been well worth it.
Yeah, so a lot of people are afraid of saying, this is what I want, because they're afraid they're gonna turn away potential business from these other areas of law or other potential referral sources. And you just mentioned something about being intentional of saying, hey, this is the exact client I want. This is the exact case I want. These are the people I want to work with. I want to work with me. And it's okay if you don't fit into this role, because then this is not the place. I'm not the lawyer. I'm not the law firm. I'm not the workplace for you. How did you feel about that, of when you say, hey, being intentional about what you want, not just in cases and clients, but employees, and being okay with missing out on other people or other cases?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And I think that people spend a lot of time, younger lawyers, I know I did, thinking like I got to say yes to everything and trying to figure out what am I costing myself if I say no to X, Y, and Z, right? And so, but I tell you, some different things I've heard and things that I have lived and experienced as truth. The fact of the matter is, in a contingency practice, a big part of one's success is based on what cases you reject. Okay. So I develop a ton of potential business, and I'm very careful about tracking all of my leads, et cetera, et cetera. I have a very, very thoroughly built out system and process. And I think I reject, I'm going to say, over 95% of what I develop. Wow. Okay. And I reject and I refer out on appropriate cases and that kind of thing. Here's the deal. Like, I know myself. My personality is, I am a deep dive person on virtually everything I do. I'm a deep dive person. So I am not a volume practice. Okay. And I have never been able to be a volume practice. I want to take cases and I want to work them up hard, and I want to maximize the outcome, whether that's by way of trial or settlement. Okay. And for me to be able to do that, when I look at a case, like, I have to know that when I see it, doesn't mean that anybody else sees it the same way I do, but that I can see my way towards liability, winning on liability in that case. Because in employment law, if I win, pretty much no matter how much I win, I'm going to be able to get attorney's fees, because there's a fee shifting statute, right? So I got to be able to know that I'm going to make it past summary judgment, and there's a way to get liability on that case. And I know that I need to be able to, the way I am very communicative. I need to be able to work with my client. I need a client who's going to listen to me, work hard, do the homework I give them, be thoughtful, and pay attention to, how I'm training them, because this is my investment. And so I'm not going to invest in somebody who's not going to respect my investment. That shit's not happening. Okay. Like, that is not happening.
Yeah.
And so I weed those out very early on. And so, I have a, as you can tell, a very strong personality. And so
no, that's a good thing though. Yeah.
It works for some people and it doesn't work for other people. And so when you're saying, being straightforward and being able to tell people, including your employees, this is what I expect, this is okay, this is not okay, do this, don't do that, all of these kinds of things in regards to the work parameters, I do the same thing with my clients. And if they're not going to listen to me, even if they start off listening to me, if they stop listening to me, and if they become, really disrespectful, I fire them. I'm out. Adios. Bye-bye. Life is too short, and you're going to screw up my investment. And so maybe that people are going to think that's too harsh. But here's the deal. Like, I talk a lot. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep going. Okay?
No, this is wonderful. That's why you're here. No, this is what we want. This is great. Please continue.
there's this one Cala Women's Conference at which there was like a business coach, and she said, you know, what drives you, right? What is your, you know, what is your business motto? If you had a motto, my name is Genie Harrison and I blank, right? And so at that moment, I said, my name is Genie Harrison and I help victims recover. That is what came out, and that is what I do. I especially help people who have been victimized by employers and who have been sexually abused. I help them recover. I help them recover emotionally. I help them recover their boundaries. I help them recover financially. And the other things, and their self-esteem, okay, and their self-respect. And the things besides money are actually the most important thing that I help people recover, because that's what actually changes their lives for the better. And so I
For them
said,
to
that's what,
regain their confidence.
yeah, absolutely. Changes their lives for the better. And so I said, that's what I do. I help victims recover. And I'm just going to be straightforward about that. That's what I'm passionate about, which comes from, you know, my own experiences. And so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to let people know that's what I do. And I'm going to let
Yeah.
people know that we're like, and you know, my firm is all women. We have a fractional, you know, director of operations who is a man, but he's not a full-time employee. And so we're a firm full of women, and these are women who have experienced a lot of different things in life. And so we, you know, love everybody that we represent, but I think, you know, we really, in terms of the client, you know, we really speak to women. And my client base is 99% women. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they feel
No,
comfortable.
I think that's, and they should, right? And this goes back to what we've talked a lot about throughout, which is just diversity of thought and diversity of experiences, right? And we've heard that you speak on that as a Calipass president, is that when you have attorneys that have come from different backgrounds and different cultural experiences, different gender experiences, they speak to the client in a different way because they can understand what that client went through in a way that a different person just can't understand. It seems
Yeah.
like you've kind of built that out also intentionally.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, I want our clients to feel like they, you know, have a place where they can really be open about what they've gone through and how they're feeling, because I can't do what I'm great at unless I can
Yeah.
have that connection with them. And like, I know I can help them. And I tell them,
Yeah.
you know, you are, and I've been there, right? So I share my experiences with them. So the things that I have been through, I start off with telling my clients about, so that they know
Yeah.
where I'm coming from, and they know that I really accept and don't judge them negatively. And I instead judge the people who should be judged, who are the perpetrators, right?
Yeah.
And so I tell them about my experiences, and I tell them right now, because they usually come to me, I catch people in the free fall of their trauma, right? That's what I do, is catch them in the free fall of their trauma. So they come to me in a very inactive trauma, and they are in active, you know, victimization, many of them. And
Yeah.
so I say, you know, I see you, you are in victimization land. I'm going to help you pack your bags and move from victimization land to survivor land. I
Yeah.
know how to get there, and I can
Yeah.
lead you, and I will help you do that. So believe me when I say we are going on a journey together. All right. And so it makes them know that they have a light at the end of the tunnel a little bit. I
Yeah.
can't reverse what's happened, but I can try to help them understand that there is a path forward. And that you
Right.
can tell I'm passionate about.
Yeah, yeah, you can tell how passionate you are about the work. And you know, it's interesting because we talked earlier about in 2013, when you started the business, you mentioned that you spoke to your husband and were like, I don't know really how to run this by myself. But at the same time, a couple of things you've mentioned in the last 10 minutes are that you have a great system when it comes to intake. You've built out a great system. You've got a fractional director of operations that kind of helps with the day-to-day. So it seems like from how you felt when you started in 2013 to where you're at now, it's very different.
I've come a long way, baby.
But so how was that growth path of, clearly you're a fantastic lawyer, you're passionate about your clients, you're passionate about the work, you understand all of that, but it seems like where you had to grow was in the business owner kind of category. Fair to say?
Totally. Absolutely fair to say. And so the way it started was I started the firm with just me and my wonderful friend and associate in my last law firm, Amber Phillips. And so I begged her to please come with me because I was starting my own firm. And she told me, she said, let me think about it. And I was like, I can't believe it. No, come with me. Don't say you're going to think about it. So then she finally said yes. And it was just the two of us in somebody's extra space. And, which was like a loft, and their extra loft space. I didn't have my own storefront. I didn't have any of those things. And we worked 24/7. I had to learn the absolute nemesis of my existence for years was QuickBooks. I had to learn.
QuickBooks is the worst. It's the worst. It's so annoying.
It's so horrible. It's like, it's torture. But I had to learn. And so I taught myself and took some, had online coaching and stuff like that and learned how to do QuickBooks, which was very important. I wanted to always make sure that I was the person controlling the books. Because I've heard of a lot of people, who have been stolen from. And I'm not going to let that happen. Like, I know I will not be able to live with myself if I let that kind of thing happen. So, so at any rate, I taught myself QuickBooks and I made all those decisions and ran everything, in my firm. And I thought it was important for me to learn every single aspect of the firm, make all the decisions about, is it, FedEx or Golden State overnight and why, and all of those things. Because how am I going to maximize profitability, and I should say maximize longevity and profitability, right? Make sure that this is a successful business. And first it really has to be a successful business, and then be able to maximize the profitability. And I had to do that by completely understanding my business. And so I did that. And, Amber and I brought cases with me because I had already been developing cases, which goes back to one of the earlier things I said here, developing business. And then as those things settled, I've been very conservative financially. And so, you're never going to see me, not that there's anything wrong with it, but you're never going to see me out there getting a jet or something like that. People are like, when do you get the GHLF helicopter?
I was hoping to get on your jet, Genie.
I'm like, no way. Not going to happen. So, and so it's just the way I am. And so I plan things carefully and I don't overextend myself. I actually have relatively little debt. And, people, I think Teresa said this one time when we were on a panel at the most recent women's conference. There's a question about, how much money do you need to start your own business, to start your own law firm? And I think she's the one who said, however much you have now. And that is the right answer. That is the correct answer. So to those who are listening to this podcast, how much do you need? You need how much you have now. Okay. If now is the time when you want to start your business, because you're going to find ways to make money. You will. Okay. Whether it's contracting, whether it's, co-counseling, whatever it is, you're going to figure it out. Okay. And you're going to do it.
That's super important, is having that desire to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks that I think maybe when they get this idea of starting their firm, they feel like they're putting in too many hours at their current firm, and so they want to go start their own firm. But you mentioned it that when you started in 2013, you were working 24/7.
Oh yeah. It's a whole other level, right? When you have your own business. And so there's nobody even in your, my own mind. I can't think, oh, he'll take care of that or she'll take care of that. No, no, I will take care of that. I was thinking to
Yeah.
myself the other day, I was on my run. I do a 5.3 mile run every Sunday, right? Which exercise is one of the most important things that people can do consistently. I want to put that out there.
Mm.
So I was on my run and I was thinking, I have spent more than 20 years working almost all the weekends to one extent or another, right? And like, for example, last year when I was Cala president, very few weekends off, usually working the entire weekend. And so the hard work, even though before I had my own business, it was on cases and, like generating all of that money for the firm in which I had all the partners and different people making the overhead decisions. And I disagreed with those decisions. But,
Yeah.
And now it's working for myself and the things that I'm passionate about. But this business is no joke, whether you're going to be a successful attorney in somebody else's firm or whether you're going to start your own firm. Like this whole quiet quitting thing, not in our
Yeah.
business. No, not in
Yeah.
our business.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
but
my position. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm going to say not in our business if
Yeah.
you want to really, push and if you want to define your life differently and success in your
Yeah.
life, which is very important to have your own definition of success. That is,
Right.
it should be a core thing that you figure out early on. It shouldn't be somebody else's. I spent decades doing living in other people's frameworks, and
Yeah.
started finally living in my own in 2013. So what is your definition of success? And your definition is fine. Okay. So, but
Yeah.
if you want to be, the Brian Panish or the Bob Simon or the Pratik Shah or the whatever, the Genie Harrison, these are people who are putting in a shit ton of time. That's just
And
what
first of all,
it
thank
is.
you for including my name. Thank you for including my name in that group. But I'll take it, despite not deserving it. I'll take it. But I 100% agree with what you said. Right. I think that everybody has to figure out what's important to them and do that. But if you want to have a 1% level of success, if you want to be in the 1% of attorneys, and I don't just mean like financially. I mean like in reputation and results and in voice and opinion, like in having a disproportionate amount of influence, it's going to take that 1% of effort that the 99% aren't going to do. And you have to have that understanding. There's trade-offs. If you don't want that, that's perfectly fine. Just
Totally.
then don't be upset if you don't get there. And then don't say that it's because of some other reason why you didn't get there, when really the reason you need to look in the mirror if you've made this quiet quitting decision or even just lower effort, right? It's all up to
Yeah.
you on what's important for you in your life.
Which is totally fine. And I'll give you an example, a perfect contrast. My brother is a structural engineer. And what was most important to him in his life was making sure that he lived 5 minutes from his house and that he was
Yeah.
able to, drop his sons off and go and and pick them up every day and go and have lunch at home. And that he did not want work to interfere in any way, shape, or form with his time with his sons, weekends, scouts, all those kinds of things. And so, in contrast, I did not give birth to my kids, right? And so I married into my third marriage, married
Mm.
into, two wonderful kids in 2011. And so, with we have an incredibly supportive, wonderful family unit, different approaches, right? Because
Yeah.
I was always very driven in terms of business and being a lawyer. That's just my
Yeah.
nature. And so
Yeah.
I couldn't, my first marriage, I'm very good friends with my ex, my first husband. And, he really wanted a much more traditional sort of wife. And we met in law school, and we were both very young,
Yeah.
And so he kind of figured out what he wanted during the course of our marriage. And I figured out what I wanted during the course of our marriage. And we
Yeah.
figured out, like, you want something different than I can give you, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And there's that compatibility issue, right? And so again, it's just knowing yourself, which sometimes it takes time, and I totally get it. And it's I think one of the most important things that we can do in our life is accept who we really are as a human being and what drives us and what we actually want, and put it on the table and say, this is who I am. This is what's important to me, and this is what I want, and this is the way I want my life to be structured, because that's going to make me happy. I'm going to have to work hard, or I'm not going to, have this, but I'm going to have that. I'm going to have, I won't be, the owner of the engineering company, but I will have had every single weekend with my kids. And that,
Hmm.
those are decisions each one of us has to make. And I commend everyone for making those decisions about their lives as early as possible.
100% agree. 100% agree that you have to figure out who you are and what you want, and then just go all in on that. And don't worry about anything else. Just
That's
go
right.
all in on what you want once you've figured it out. So a couple more questions, and then we'll let you get back to kicking butt. Since you started your firm in 2013 to today, when you think about it for a second, what would you say was your hardest day as a business owner?
Oh, for me, the hardest days as a business owner are always when I have to tell an employee that it's not working out. That, I mean, even though it's necessary, it just crushes me. Honestly, that's it.
Yeah, because you understand that they've been trying to build their life with this job in mind, and when you hire somebody, you're an eternal optimist. We all are. When you hire
Yeah,
somebody, you hope it's always going to work out because that's why you hired them. You
yeah,
you thought they had the tools needed to succeed at your company, and it's almost obviously it's hurtful for the person that you're letting go, but it's also admitting that you were wrong.
yeah. Well, and it's, you've invested. I always invest heavily in, the employees here, education, continued education, mentoring, one-on-one, all of that. And you invest, and then sometimes despite everybody's best efforts, it's just not the good fit. And
Yeah.
it's really hard to say that. I'm a very empathetic person. I don't know if you can tell. And so I take people's well-being and their emotions very, very seriously. And one of the things I'm proud about at my firm is that we're really able to um, have have the employees prioritize their lives, working out, their families, kids, their own health care, and being healthy in their lives, et cetera, et cetera. And so when it doesn't work out, I'm sad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what are your favorite days as a business owner?
My favorite days as a business owner are seeing the successes of the people who work here. And
Yeah.
when they, when they have their achievements, that, is multiplied so much for me, because, like, they wouldn't be having those achievements if I didn't, in this moment, in this way, if I didn't
Yeah.
take the risk to start the firm. It wouldn't This place wouldn't exist if I didn't
Yeah.
do what I did, and at the times that I did it. And as hard as it can be, and as hard as it has been at various times, just seeing them succeed makes me so happy and grateful that I took the risk, and that I have created a place where they feel comfortable and confident and supported, to spread their wings and do their best.
I love that. I love that. One final question, and then we'll wrap up here is if you could go back in time to, 1992, 1995, mid 90s, and you could talk to younger Genie Harrison, what would you tell her?
I would tell her that she's braver than almost anybody I've ever known, that she's going to have an amazing life, that she is going to make herself proud, that she's going to make the legal community proud, and she's going to help change some people's lives for the better. And she's going to have an amazing family with the love of her life and a truly epic relationship. And she's going to meet wonderful people along the way and have an opportunity to do really fascinating things. So I see wonderful things for her, and she should try to enjoy it as much as possible. That's what I would say.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Genie, for coming on. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for listening or watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Bootstrap Solo. And remember, just because people like Genie Harrison make it look easy and effortless, it doesn't mean that it is or it was. And as always, the one ask I have for all our listeners and watchers is if you enjoyed the pod, please share it where you share stuff, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. We can only grow if you let others know about it. And so we'd appreciate your help in doing that. And that way we can continue to get great guests like Genie on here. Thank you again, and see you next time.